Hello and welcome back. Once again, we're still doing the podcast. This is Page Chewing Comics and Manga Pick of the Week, episode number 53. We've got a huge episode for all the fans out there. This is, just to remind you all, this is a podcast where we talk about primarily new-ish, single-issue comics. My name's Mike, and I'm back here once again with Steve. And I thought I would just start us off with a question like we did the last time. So this actually came up today when I was at the comic book store. I saw a gentleman when he was picking up his pull list, his subscriptions. He was immediately putting them into bags, and boards, because he didn't want to touch them. He wanted to protect them for his bus ride home. And I thought, wow, I never thought of that. And I'm always kind of thinking about, like, what do I do? How much do I touch these, or do I not care? So the question's for you, Steve. What do you do to protect or preserve your comics, or if anything?
I'm weird, so I always put them in bags and boards as soon as I get home. If they're not already in a bag and board at the store, at the shop, I'll put them in a bag and a board when I get home.
Okay, but you don't necessarily do it at the shop itself.
If there's some available, yeah.
Oh, really?
I'll do it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm weird.
Okay. And in my case, when I was young and I started out, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I would just read something and then toss it behind my back, and it would land somewhere. But now I am doing bags and boards. But I have to say I wait a little bit until maybe like once a week, then I can kind of do an assembly line. But it's okay. It's nice. And that way, I guess the question is, like, are you hoping that you want to maintain value, or is it just something you like to do? Or
I think it's just something, as a collector, I like to collect things, which isn't always the best hobby to have or the best tendencies to have, but it's just I just have the urge to put everything in a protective sleeve of some kind.
Yeah.
So even like trading card games I play or whatever, I always try to protect them. Even the bag and the board are probably worth more than a lot of the books I have, at the end of the day, but I think it's more of just a hobby and kind of just, you just like the whole experience of putting it in a bag and a board and then, folding the plastic back and little piece of Scotch tape, and it's nice and safe. I don't know. I think it's more of a comfort thing than anything.
Yeah. It also keeps things nice and tidy because they don't stack up that well. They'll slide and it'll be a big mess.
What about you? Do you put them all in bags and boards or just certain ones?
No, now I'm doing all of them, and I'm even doing the magazine sized, which have a special, there's a special size, which I learned about. Yeah, so I've been doing it pretty systematically.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It took a little bit of a hiatus there, but glad you're back in town, and not back like you came back from the dead, like you were traveling. So thankfully, we're back to our schedule. But yeah, thanks everyone for hanging out with us and kind of coming along the ride with us. We're going to be talking about some books that are, in some cases, a few weeks old because we were out for a bit. So, these the first book I'm going to talk about, the new issue, is already out. So, but it's still it's a series I've been reading since the beginning, and that is Drawing Blood, number 4. So we continue to follow Bookman and or Kevin Eastman, if you will, and in this issue, he's at a convention and they have to diffuse a situation at the convention. It does touch on fandom and having to appease fans and having to kind of play the role sometimes of having to, I guess you could say, lie to certain fans or just to kind of get them to shut up. And I kind of felt like it was commentary on fandoms in a way, and just how I don't know, say passionate or carried away some fandoms can be, to the point of being just kind of taking things a little too seriously. But after that, after the convention portion of the book, it transitions to a different kind of part of the story, and it just kind of loses me, and it just didn't have the same. It kind of seems like we've stopped. The second half just seems like we hit the series had a certain pace to it, and now it feels like we're slowing down. And the second half or so of that book just kind of felt like we hit some quicksand, and it was a little. It was just different. It just had a different tone, different feel to it, and I'm just not quite sure what the point of it was. I guess we'll find out. I'm still enjoying the series, but yeah, it kind of a lopsided issue for me, but still on board, of course.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to stick with it and see if it comes back to more of your more your liking. I've noticed a few of the series I've been reading, like they'll have them. It can't always be great, There's moments, and I have a few, maybe one or two like that I could talk about today.
Yeah,
but I think we're there's some that we're kind of invested in, and we're going to stick with them. So for me, I have something that just kind of caught my attention. I don't know what this says about me, but the title is Paranoid Gardens #1, and this is from Dark Horse Comics. It's if you look on the cover, it's very colorful, and you see like what appear to be people at a senior living center or what have you, but they are monsters. Some of them are monsters. Some of them appear to be normal people or humans. Once I kind of dove in, yeah, this is all over the place, but in a good way, I think. At least so far. I'm liking what I'm seeing, but I could see how somebody might have trouble following characters such as the cheeky monkey character. But it's there's more to it. That's a character that's like this is a fictionalized version of our world, I think, obviously, but it's introducing a character that's some influential character that is kind of like a Mickey Mouse, somebody that follows like maybe a cult associated with a Mickey Mouse kind of character who appears to be a Bolshevik. And cut to a nursing home or senior living center where we have a plethora of diverse, imaginative characters, monsters, demons, humans, as was indicated on the cover. And we learn about a character named Louise. She appears to have amnesia. And we just starting to understand what this place, which is the kind of nursing home, which is called Paradise Gardens. But the physical place, the home itself, appears to be a character. It's living. It's a living, breathing. So like they peer back into a wall and see like flesh and like oozing. And so I got to say, it's really out there. There is a story, and I know issue 2 came out, but I didn't get to it yet. So just to say, I was excited with this one. I liked it, and I think I subscribed.
Wow, it's going on the list.
Oh yeah, I think yeah. I it might be a little too. It does have some humor in it, but I didn't think it was too much. Yeah, I have to admit, I read it probably a month ago, but it's still sticking with me. So that's something.
That's a good sign when it sticks with you like that.
Yeah.
So the next one for me was Spawn 355. And I know the last time I talked about a Spawn book or any Spawn book, I complained about the lack of really anything happening. Story progression, character progression. Just feels like we're not going anywhere. In this issue, some things happened. There were some events. I don't know if it's because I'm not familiar with the kind of long-term story or things that have been set up in previous issues or previous years, decades. But it didn't seem like it was. It still feels like we're just kind of in slow motion. So but I will say that I love the art by Brett Booth. It has like a Jim Lee kind of feel to it, and it just tickles my 90s nostalgia little black heart. That kind of art style. And one thing I've been curious about in books like this, I think we may have talked about this before, is there's all this violence in these books and Spawn that there's these really graphic battle scenes, but yet they don't curse. And I don't get it. If you're going to have this really graphic violence, and which I'm fine with, I mean, I don't care, but it just seems weird to me that you can have this very graphic violence, this visceral violence on the page, and blood and guts and severed limbs and crazy stuff, but then you can't see shit. It's like, why? Like, why? I don't understand it. Maybe it's an FCC thing. Maybe it's something with, I don't know. There may be a reason for it, but I need to find out because it's irritating. But I'm still hanging on to Spawn. I don't know how long. I'm hoping things will pick up. I'm hoping things start happening. I'm getting to the realization that this just may not be for me.
Yeah. With the cursing, does it have anything to do with the rating? Is it mature or teen plus?
It might. Yeah, that might be. But then again, this really I mean, if you watched a movie, it'd be rated R for sure. So it's very lopsided. It seems odd to me, but maybe there's a reason for it with words instead of violence, which doesn't make sense. But either way.
Yeah, well, the next one that I have is an ongoing series called Deviant. This is issue number 7. So we're this dawned on me that this is really more of like a detective story. It didn't start out that way, but there's some really kind of creepy but also good detective work happening that is certainly not so in your face or obvious what's going on. And I'm just really appreciating the twists and turns and the writing from James Tynion. This starts out with a kind of a new character, but really probably not going to be a recurring character. But we meet a woman who loves selling these kind of the Deviant killer mask on Etsy, and she is kind of she's used to kind of help track down some clues to find out who the real killer is. I'm not going to give too much away here, but I just really appreciated starting off with something like that, and she's very passionate about what she loves about serial killers, and but she's made it into a business. So it was just kind of creepy. Yeah, I gotta say it, but I it's really keeping me guessing. There's probably a lot of clues that are being shown to the reader, but I assume I'm missing a few of them. It's one of those where I really think for people that like this sort of genre, it might be worth reading multiple times, because I get the sense that there is some good information being shared, but with the month-to-month style that we're not reading it in succession, it's easy to miss. But I'm really enjoying it, and this could have been my pick of the week. And
oh wow,
I have to say the coloring is very haunting, and it's pale and dark, and there's something about it that's just working for me. So a lot of use of blacks and yellow. So I have to shout out the colorist. I guess
it's amazing how much the colors can change your experience reading a book like that.
Oh yeah, yes. The colorist's name is Hassan Otsman El-Hao, and may have mispronounced the name, but tried my best. No, it's really important for this one, I think, to set the tone.
Do we know how many issues that will be? Or is it a story that's winding down, or is it going to go on for a little bit?
That is a great question. I actually wrote that down. I was asking myself, is this going to be 10 issues? I have a feeling it's going to go to Christmas, because this is a Christmas story, and I have a feeling it's going to continue until December. But
yeah,
I don't know.
It looks like it's 9 issues, so there's 2 more. So it could, yeah,
it'll be close.
Yeah. So I'm guessing they'll probably stretch it out to December.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense to me.
Yeah. So the next one on the list is one that we've been reading, I think, since the beginning. And that is Kneel Before Zod. It's a book that I think you were kind of up and down on a little bit. I think I've been a little bit up and down, but mostly up. And surprisingly, it looks like this series is over at 8 issues. It was planned for 12. And I was reading this one and I got to the end and that was it. And it does leave the door cracked for something later, possibly. There seems to be, it seems like a last ditch, kind of just leaving that door just cracked open just a little bit, just in the event that they have a chance to finish. And I'm really bummed about this. The story felt very rushed in this issue. It didn't have really any resolutions. It's really unfortunate we don't have the other 4 issues in this one, although the end, after the meeting with Sinestro, there were lots of possibilities, lots of different ways, and lots of things you could go with that. It just really disappointed that it ended this way. And well, the art wasn't my favorite throughout. I was really invested and interested in the story. The pace it was a little bit more relaxed. There was things would happen, but it didn't feel rushed. And at the very end, it felt rushed, and it just didn't. It wasn't. You knew that something was off. So I'm really, really bummed about this, because I wish we would have had the other 4 issues. I wish they would have been able to tell their story, because it was all set up, and it just, I'm really bummed about this. Of all the books that get a chance to finish, from what I understand, is this was canceled, and this is really disappointing.
Yeah, I noticed that it said "the end for now?" ? And I was going to ask you what you thought, because I know we've both been reading the series. I will say one positive thing. I thought, this is going to be like, when I first started reading it, I was like, this is going to be like a creature of the week, and Zod comes, when we saw Sinestro, but that was not the case at all. So I actually liked that it went a different way. But I wasn't anticipating that, this is going to be the end of the series. So it sounds like you have more confirmation that this is it.
Yeah, after I read it, I looked it up, because the end said "the end" with a question mark. So I looked it up. I was confused, and I did find some information. I did with my thorough search. So, after copious amounts of research, it looks like it was canceled by DC. It was planned for 12, but it only had 8 until they pulled the plug. From what I understand, is low sales. I'm guessing if it sold better, it probably would have continued. And I don't know. It's of all the books that continue, all the really crap books that are out there. Sorry, but there's a lot of bad books out there from DC and Marvel, and especially DC and Marvel, because they print so many of them. There's so many just shit books, and just I wish they would have let him finish. But
and that tells us something about our tastes, because we like this one, and
yeah,
we're not into as many of the other, DC and Marvel stuff. We definitely tried, this at least this past year. Yeah, I'm now that you're saying it, I'm bummed to hear that. So
yeah.
and I mean, it kind of actually seemed towards the end there that he was, there was some momentum to go somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway.
Yeah, I think, and maybe the people who read, like the DC and Marvel fans who every month come back, and I think they may be invested in kind of the larger universe, and that may be a draw for them to have the connection, to have things that interact with the larger universe. And since they didn't really do that, maybe that wasn't appealing to those fans who like the books that interact with each other, and they kind of, the larger universes, it matters in a way. Maybe that was part of it, but it's a bummer. So the next one for me, this one I picked up because it was a Cyberforce book, and it reminded me, again, the 90s nostalgia got me. But as a Cyberforce book, it's called Cyberforce Shootout. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but it's a one shot. And if I would have known it was a one shot, I probably wouldn't have bought it. Of course, with the one shot, it's pretty light on story. It's one modified human is tasked with hunting out another modified human and eliminating the asset. I thought this was the beginning of a new series. It kind of felt like things were being set up, but yeah, now that I know it was just a one shot, but maybe it's connected to the larger Cyberforce, whatever they're setting up. The art was very clean and sharp, and yeah, I think it gave the nostalgia. It definitely scratched that nostalgia itch, but in good and bad ways from the 90s, if that makes sense. It did have kind of the certain aspects of the story were kind of light. It seemed like it was focused more on aesthetics. And in that sense, it was a little silly, looking back now, but it was okay. If you're a fan of Cyberforce, I guess maybe check it out, but wasn't my favorite.
I just looked it up online, and it said this was a Top Cow talent hunt. But it's going back to 2022. That there were, maybe this is from years ago, but the art, the Billy Muggleberg, who's the writer, I guess maybe he was some kind of a rising star, or still is, but I wondered if that meant anything. But I didn't know any. This is my first time actually hearing about Cyberforce.
Oh, okay.
I might check it out. Check out some of the back issues or something. So the next one that I have is, it's called Red Before Black, and this is a reference to, I don't know about the herpetologists out there, but this is a reference to the coral snake. And this comic takes place in Florida, and it's from Boom Studios, written by Stephanie Phillips with artwork by Goran Sudzuka. The main character, Val, is somebody that just gets out of prison, and she appears to be looking to get back into her her life in organized crime. There's a lot of questions that she gets asked when she kind of comes up across, the crime boss, if you will, and she gets asked to do a job. I think that's an interesting premise, but it does make a twist, which I appreciated because I didn't think that sounded very new or interesting. So, I won't go into it too much, but she ends up she's not just trying to get back to her old job. She appears to actually also have some kind of supernatural visions, and maybe working for somebody else. So if that intrigues you, sounds like something to check out. I will say something that I don't like, and I'm seeing this a lot, and this is in here, but it's not too bad. There's like when you're introducing characters now, there's a tendency in some of these comics to introduce a block of text under the person's name, and it's like, this is John Smith, and he's a mercenary, and he's age 42, and whatever. And I'm just like, I don't necessarily need that. I don't know. I definitely see that more and more. I don't feel like it's necessary. It's throughout this comic. There's like 5 or 6 people, and they're like, this is Max, and he's whatever. But I'm not a fan of that.
I wonder if that's because the writers and the editors don't trust the reader.
Yeah.
Or is it because they're trying to appeal to whether or not it's true, maybe a perceived lack of attention span, that people won't invest the time to learn about what these characters do or their backstories, and they just kind of give them all the information all at once in hopes that they'll stick around and not feel like there's not enough information. Maybe it's, I don't know. Either way, it's disappointing.
I have a feeling it's more common in like an issue 1. So maybe I should just kind of give them some slack, because they want people to, there must be some mindset that whether it's they don't trust the reader, but they don't want people to feel so lost and want to, feel like they're, I don't know, seeing movie credits or something. I don't know.
Well, there's been a few authors recently that I've spoken with who write not comics but novels, and they've mentioned that editors want them to kind of spill it all right away. That they need to capture the attention of the reader very, very quickly. So in the first 5 to 10 pages, if you're not throwing enough information at the reader to have them invest, then they'll move on to something else, and it's really sad. Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah, we can just keep fighting the good fight, I guess. Yeah. So the next one, this is Patra number 1. It's 1 of 4. It's by Dark Horse. So the art is what kind of caught my eye on this one. It has a very dark, scratchy Halloween vibe to it. Now, there's elements to this book I really enjoyed. The art is detailed, and exactly the style is what, just I look for. I found the story to be a bit lacking, and I'm not sure if it's enough in the first issue to bring me back for the second. I'm not sure it hooked me, and I just was complaining about not being hooked after the first few pages, but there you go. It is brutal and violent, which of course everyone knows that I'm a fan of, but it still wasn't enough. There wasn't enough substance along with that. It didn't have the weight. It didn't have the emotional weight just yet before it kind of started flinging bodies at you and blood and violence. So it didn't feel meaningful. It didn't feel like it meant anything. But I think maybe it was going for just setting the stage for what may come later. This will be one that I'll kind of decide as I see issue 2 on the shelf if I pick it up or not. But the art I really loved. The story just wasn't quite enough to get me just yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued. I'm actually going to talk about something that might be a little bit similar in a moment here, but I'll save that for later. But right now I'll be talking about Geiger number 5. So I've been following this series and been enjoying myself. And this one didn't disappoint too much. But let me just say that this issue is like kind of just like an action. There's an escape. Geiger was in a very bad predicament in issue number 4 from this kind of wild villain character who's called the Electrician, and he can like electrically shock people, but he's got more. What I do like about the writing is there's more to characters. The villain has more to him than just kind of like the surface level. I'm a bad guy. So I think he was. We even get a little bit of the villain's backstory. I really like Gary Frank's artwork. There's something about it. It's gritty, but also captivating. So I feel like I need to read more, or view more comics that he's worked on. This one does get at the very end a glimpse into a bigger world. So it's been, I think, for the last few issues, has been pretty contained, and we get a kind of introduction to a character. And I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to get into this shared universe stuff, but it hasn't really so much yet. But I have a feeling that's coming up, and I just haven't been following the other stories as much. So I don't know why, but I'm just not hooked into doing that yet.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah. So far, that has not been an issue for this series. So we'll see.
From a business standpoint, I can see why it would be advantageous to have a connected universe. Because if someone does like the book and you're almost forcing them to buy the other ones. But on the other hand, if you just want to read the one book and you're not interested in the other three or whatever it is, you can buy the one that you want to read, and then maybe there's a big event later that they'll all cross paths or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jeff Johns is the author of multiple titles in this universe. I forget what it's called. Everything has its own kind of name, but
yeah.
So he is orchestrating it. He must have got a pretty good deal or whatever, like to do all these things and come back to Image, because he was working, I think, mostly with DC, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't want to get into that too much because it's conjecture on my side. But
yeah, I think I don't know if you've read his Green Lantern, but that was pretty good stuff. Very good stuff. I don't even like Green Lantern. It was a good one. Yeah.
I used to really like Green Lantern when I was younger, so I actually am interested. I think I'm interested.
It's really good. Yeah, there's and it leads into the Sinestro Wars, and then it goes to Blackest Night and Brightest Day. So there were some really great events that he kind of set up. So maybe that's what he's doing here, is he's setting up his own universe. But I guess we'll find out. See if he forces Mike to buy more books. So the next one for me is Stand Still. This is issue 1 of 8. This is by Image Comics. Now, how many of us have wondered what we would do if we could freeze time and still move around and everyone else is frozen in time? Well, there's a man, the setup for this one, the premise is that there's a man who is able to do that. He's able to freeze time and still move around and do whatever he wants while everyone else is frozen. In time, they have no recollection of what he's doing or what he does. So, of course, he's doing things. He seems almost like a vigilante, but he's also committing crimes. So seems like he's trying to set things. He's trying to set wrongs right, but he's also committing crimes. So people notice, and now he has people looking for him, and he's running around freezing time as he pleases. So you're not quite sure what to think of the main character yet. Is he an antagonist or protagonist? We're not sure yet. But I think it's an interesting setup. The art is really solid. I like the premise. It's one I'll keep an eye on. But for anyone who is listening, let us know what you would do if you could freeze time. There's a link below to send us a message. So let us know what you would do if you could freeze time and wander around and do what you want, and just keep it PG-13. But yeah, so I think it's a fun setup.
Yeah, that's an interesting premise. I feel like it's kind of been done a little bit but maybe not enough. Something you could really explore. Um, so I missed that one. Might have to check it out. So the next one that I have is called Damaged People. And this is from Alien Books. For some reason, I thought that was an imprint of another publisher, but now I'm not sure. And this is a writer and artist. It's a case where the writer and the artist is the same person, and that person's name is Damien Connolly. So similar to what you, I think, described with Patra, excuse me. The artwork is just very, very striking here. What is going on looks like, maybe to me, and this is a layperson trying to talk about art, is that it's very wispy, but and maybe kind of seems like images are a little bit smudged, but I think that's done for effect because this is a ghost story. But I have to just say one last thing about the artwork. There's a very limited color palette, and it looks like it's chalk on a black chalkboard. So you have mainly black background without much detail, but then the characters are and different elements of the foreground or what have you are just very faintly penciled in. So that alone is just really something else, and I just appreciate it. It really helps with the tone. Like I said, I think this is an anthology series, and this is episode 1 is called Ghost Girl. It has vibes of the movie Ghost Story, which I think we both watched. I think you've talked about it before, Steve. And this centers around a character called Abby, who's a young woman who loves ghosts, and she pretends to be a ghost to scare people. And she does meet a real ghost. And kind of the tables get turned a little bit, but I was a little bit surprised at the ending. Because this is an anthology, this is going to be a series of one shots. I don't want to say too much about what happens here. But on the back cover, there is kind of a quote, or I think that summarizes what the series is about. And it says, "We are damaged people living in a world of horrors. Who can fix us?" And I wonder if these people try to be fixed. And the writing, there's a few moments where I didn't totally vibe with the writing. I was a little bit disappointed, but just the general tone and vibe of this, if you're into horror, I think it's worth checking out. I don't know what this is each. Before we started recording, we talked about how this is a little bit similar to Swan Songs, which was by now, is it Price? Anyway, so there's some similarities there, but I really like the artwork. So, and might be something that may interest you, Steve.
If anything that's compared to Swan Songs, I'm in. I'm there. It's my kind of thing. The grief and all the sad emotions are kind of my thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I already have it on my list. I'm making a list of all the books you're talking about today so I can go out and get them. We can compare notes. So the next one for me is Dark Knights of Steel All Winter 2. And I accidentally went out of order because we have an order here on the screen and I skipped. So, but anyway, the listeners are like, what are you talking about? So anyway, the setup here I really love. It's a monochrome color, absence of color palette because it's monochrome. And the style is a feast for I just love the art. It's great. The monochrome and the art style, it fits in this medieval Norse fantasy setting. It's an Elseworlds tale with Deathstroke is the main character, different version of Deathstroke. And the setup is what happens when you remove color from the world. What becomes of the world when you remove color? And for Death, it just seems like a perfect setup for a Deathstroke type of character, for this kind of really unforgiving, brutal world that they're in. It seems like the perfect kind of setup for it. Now, you would think this is like heaven. This is like a match made in heaven, but is it really? I'm not sure. I prefer my everyone's gonna be surprised. I prefer my stories to have to remain dark, and if they are setting up a dark kind of tone and this really hopeless, oppressive world, I prefer for it to remain there, at least for a little bit, at least for a while. Remain in this world, kind of set things up. You set the tone for the world. You create this unforgiving, brutal, violent, dangerous world without color, and I kind of expect that to go on for at least a while. I won't give away too much, but I can kind of see where they're going with it, and I'm not sure that it's for me, and I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not kind of the way I would imagine this goes, and I know how that comes off, but it's just not kind of the direction this head isn't the story that I would be interested in. Now, I think it's going the opposite way of what I would prefer, which is fine. I know a lot of people love it, so I'm also not a huge fan of like a chosen one or having children in the stories, in these types of stories, and having kind of those tropes being used. Again, doesn't mean it's a bad book. It just means that it just doesn't appeal to the things that I enjoy. And chosen one stories and having kids in worlds like this, just not my thing. So I'm going to hang on for a little bit longer, see where it goes. And if it does go that direction, where I kind of feel like it's going, then I might have to buy out. But I may just stay on just for the art too, because I love the art so much. I just love to look at it. It's just great. So we'll see what happens, but it'll be one that I'll hang on to for a little bit longer.
So Steve, is this written by Jay Kristoff, who is a kind of
yes, I believe it is.
Okay, because we know him. I've not read any of his work, but I've heard him discussed in kind of our fantasy and kind of grimdark world. I think I know you like, and I like as well. He wrote Empire of the Vampire, which I've been meaning to check out. So this is another. I think we had one way back when we had another author, and now I'm blanking on his name, who was a fantasy writer that is venturing into comics.
Oh, what was it? I forget who it was.
If it comes to me, I'll let you know. But otherwise, we'd be waiting a while. It's Eames, Nicholas Eames.
Eames, wow. There you go. Yeah,
I'm on top of it today. So this is really the next one that I'm going to talk about. I asked if you knew about it, but it's from a very I thought is an obscure company or publisher called Ahoy Comics, and the title is Babs. But you may be bummed because this is Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows, who I know you love.
Oh wow!
And I'm sure that you can check it out. I may have ordered it specially because I'm not sure if my comic store carried it. And this is let me just say, kind of similar vein in a way. This is a fantasy world. It's a sword and sorcery type of story that features a female character called Babs. So she's kind of like a Red Sonja. But let me just say right away that this is much more of just a parody. There is some violence, of course, with Garth Ennis. There's gore, which we probably know to expect here. There is I would say they may have gone a little bit far off the deep end with the humor. And I'll just give you a taste. They talk about, the equivalent of, Viagra pills in a fantasy world. They talk about the deep state political kind of stuff in a fantasy world. But Babs herself is a fun character. She's a very powerful kind of barbarian. There's some good moments, but I wonder how this is going to go. I think it's difficult to pull off the amount of humor. Let me just say there's a lot of talking characters that you wouldn't expect, horses, weapons that talk, and that maybe the latter, the talking weapon. I don't know if it was needed. Maybe it'll go somewhere. This one is definitely over the top, as we probably could expect. And I like it. I'm going to continue for sure. It was just it was maybe just a little bit too much over the top on the funny stuff. It does not take itself seriously at all, though. So just something to be aware
of. How did I miss that? How did I miss that book? Yeah, after The Boys, I think Ennis can. It's so funny because he writes something like Crossed, which is devoid of humor.
Oh,
there's no humor in Crossed, and then he'll write something like The Boys, or even Preacher has a lot of humor in it, a lot of crude humor. For those of you who have read the run, his Preacher run, you know what I'm talking about. But it does go. He does push the envelope on humor, and so I'll have to check that out. It can be a bit much sometimes. Yeah, for sure.
It's fun. It's meant to be fun, and I had some fun with it. And I think, like some of the other comedy stuff, there's going to be moments that are going to work and not work, but I'm liking it. So we'll see where it goes.
Well, damn! How did I miss it? I have to remedy that on my next trip to the store. So the next book for me is Dick Tracy number 4. Another good issue. I think, although I'm starting to wonder how they're going to continue balancing the kind of the new, and I hate to say more modern, I hate the way that sounds, but the new kind of adult spin on Dick Tracy while still maintaining the kind of aw shucksness of Dick Tracy, the kind of the phrases and the kind of good old boy type of thing that it had, the kind of the essence of Dick Tracy. There is there's a balancing act they've been doing of being in the middle of it, having an updated feel, but also maintaining that kind of aw shucks. And you can kind of see now where it's a tough balance. It's tough to maintain both sides of it. Because you do, for me anyway, I do like to see the more modern, again, more modern, more kind of adult take on it. But you still want to have Dick Tracy remain to be Dick Tracy. Otherwise, you might as well create a new character and just have him be a detective and do what you want with him. So I know it's an IP, and you have to you have to maintain certain. I'm assuming certain standards with the character. So you can see that. I can see that now that they're having. It's a tough balance. It can't be easy. For the violence and the dialogue, you can see those cracks a little bit, and not to fault them. It's tough, but overall, the story's moving along. We're kind of discovering new things. They're unraveling a mystery. They're introducing classic Dick Tracy characters, and the characters are given a new kind of spin. They seem more formidable. They're more dangerous, and they are still playing around with the PTSD aspects of Dick Tracy, the character, and his wartime. And I think that's really fascinating. I love that type of thing where you kind of explore those themes and the mental toll that all those experiences take on you, and the things you carry with you that we can't see that is in your mind. So I think all that's really great. I think exploring those is really important. So overall, I think I'll continue reading it. I think there's there's something special about the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure I'll continue for a long term, but for now, I'm still on board.
Yeah. Does he have the watch that is like not so new technology anymore? That like the old school Apple Watch or whatever.
I don't remember him having like a 1950s, 1940s watch.
But I think it had a radio. I think you could talk into it.
Yeah, it was like whoa, there's a radio. Now you have like your whole life on your wrist. But yeah, I don't recall. I don't think we've gotten there yet. Maybe they'll have a twist on that eventually.
Okay. So I'm about to get to my pick of the week, but there's one more I wanted to get to very quickly that I covered. This is issue 2, so I've covered this before. And this is called Self-Help. One of the authors is Owen King of Stephen King, progeny fame. And this is just to remind us all, this is a kind of stolen identity story. And I think that's kind of interesting, but I had to ask myself, what do you do with this premise to kind of keep it going, to keep it interesting? And I have to say, this really threw me for a loop. I was a little bit lost with the sequencing. I actually feel like there might have been some pages missing here, because I was turning pages and I was like, we did go back in time at the beginning. There's like a flashback to to this doppelganger character. And then I have to say, I just got kind of lost. So again, it's got an interesting premise. I have to say I was attracted to the Owen King to see how that turned out. I'm probably going to stick with it, but I felt like I need to give it one more chance because this one was a little bit off kilter. So I'm just going to jump right into my pick of the week. And actually, I did read 2 issues, but I'm going to try to cover them quickly. And actually, my pick of the week is a tie with the one you're going to talk about, Steve. So this is why I'm going to talk about Grommets. This is issue number 3. I've noticed that at least in the first or second page, there's always like a splash of nostalgia. So you'll see one of these characters' bedrooms, and they have posters on the wall, and they're drinking Tang or whatever, and they're listening to Metallica or whatever, different music from the 80s that I remember. And so that just is just tossed at you every time, and it just kind of it hits people that are prone to that thing. This one features quite a lot of drug use, and mind you, these characters are in middle school. There are quite a few fucks in this case, and you just mentioned earlier this is a teen plus, but they curse like nobody's business.
Why can they curse but Spawn can't?
That's a great question, and I think this is also Image, so we need to write to Robert Kirkman and complain. But there's just a lot of the humor is just working. I don't know. People are really picking on each other. These young kids. The 2 main characters are Rick and Brian, and the artwork is just awesome. There's an arcade scene in here, and you see like Dig Dug and whatever, all these old the Centipede and things like that. But I have to say the writing is so good that it's not just about nostalgia. There is more of a kind of slice of life thing going on, like not a real deep story, but it's just, I don't know. I found this one to be almost like perfect. This issue number 3, and it leads us up into like this big party that's going to happen with girls that they met in, I think, issue 2, these 2 guys, the 2 skateboarders. And then, so in issue 4, this is really just kind of that party playing out. And there's alcohol, there's drugs, there's also a very dramatic scene, much more serious scene with the father and son, which includes even some abuse, and I was a little bit taken aback, but they handled it well. I think the one thing that I didn't maybe love at the end is there's just it's a little bit more cliche. So there's got to be a fine line between nostalgia and cliche, but it's still really, really good. I don't usually go for this kind of thing, but I think it's just working for me. So yeah, this was my pick of the week.
Talk about balancing, having that balance. I think having the balance of nostalgia, and giving people like us who get a kick out of that kind of thing, kind of the things that we recognize and give us that nostalgia feeling, but also still not leading into it too much to where it takes away from the story and it's what you depend on. It's a tough balance to maintain.
I think they're balancing it with what it's like to be a teen in the 80s, what it's like to be growing up. I have a child who's around that age, and so it's just somehow they're really tapping into that experience, which for me is a long, long time ago. But just hitting on some it's also sensitive. It's not just humor, so it's a really good mix.
It is. Yeah, it is a different world now than it was even in the 90s, growing up in the 90s.
Definitely.
Yeah, now we're healing at clouds. Don't want to do that, but yeah, it's fun to, I think we all have a connection to kind of the decade we grew up in, no matter what decade it is or what time it is. We all just have that kind of love for that time period, even if you go back and realize, this is complete crap. I mean, looking back, it's fun. So yeah. It's one of those things. But definitely one that I should have started at the beginning. I have to catch up because I know you've really loved it. So
yeah, or wait for the trade paperback.
Yeah. Good point. Speaking of waiting, I didn't catch so my pick of the week is Sacrificers number 11. It's by Image Comics. And I didn't catch at the end of this issue that they're going on a hiatus for 3 months after this, which is a bummer. But this book is so damn good. I'm fine. Take your time. Remember, take your time. Take your time. We'll be here when you come back. Yeah. So in this one, we're really starting to see the consequences of the revolution of Pigeon's actions. We're starting to see the unintended consequences of what Pigeon has done and the ripples that it's causing. Now, you would think that Pigeon has we talked about his transformation, his character arc, and where they started and where they are now, and you see what else that has affected in this issue. Who else has attention? Who else is paying more attention to what's happening and what Pigeon's been doing, and who will suffer because of those decisions? People who are helpless, who are under the thumb of this regime, and they'll be the ones who pay the price. Which I felt like it was true to it's typically what happens in our world is people who are helpless are the ones who usually pay the price for the decisions of more powerful people. And you start to wonder, is it worth the sacrifice? Is it what's going to change because of Pigeon's actions? Is there going to be serious change, or is this going to be something short-lived that people will pay for that won't really change anything in the bigger world? Lots of questions, lots of things to consider. And I think it's things that will keep you thinking about long after you read the issue. So yeah, I think this issue was more of a street level perspective of those people who are, just being oppressed or who are under the thumb of this regime and who are completely helpless. So, and also, how do you deal with that kind of oppression? Or can you do anything about it? And who else will be caught in the crossfire of Pigeon's actions and his I guess you could say, war, his mission, his actions. So yeah, I think this was great, and it's really sad. Lots of things happening, and it's really really effective.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. This one is this is very well done, and I have to admit we haven't seen Pigeon for quite a while. I think like maybe in 2 issues we haven't. He's like the main character, who is taking a very interesting path, and this one makes me think that there's going to be possibly somebody who's going to be, shining through in the next when we have the return of the series in a few months. But I did like to, for whatever reason, I like to see the foreman again, who's an interesting character. I can't say he's a good character, but I'm intrigued by him. There's just there's enough world building, but not too much really, and we don't know. There's a lot of questions, but we're just going along with it, and we don't need, kind of going back to the comment earlier, like they don't need to say like, all this, tell the reader all this extra information, and so I think there's a lot of mystery though too. Don't you think? Like we don't necessarily know everything. Do we need to know? I don't think. Like I like to be just along for the ride more. I think, but yeah, I'm really, I'm really digging it as well. So far. And the other thing that I learned, Steve, is that the artist Max Fiumara, I believe he's from Argentina or possibly Brazil. Because I actually looked him up, and he is coming back for the next issue. But we can't complain about the artwork in this one, even though it's a different artist. But he is described as a co-creator with Reminder, so we'll be happy to have him back, though. I think too.
Yeah, I think the artist who's taken over, and don't have the book in front of me, but the artist who took over has done a fantastic job. I think it still has the same style and tone. It's a little bit different. I mean, you can tell the difference, but I think it's kudos to them because it's been, I'll say seamless, but as close to seamless as you can get with the different artists. For the book like this, that the art is so defining, is so important to the story. Done a really great job with it. Yeah. So that's number 53.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Yeah. So it's good to be back. We'll have, I think we both have books we didn't add to our list this week because we're going to come back and talk about them next week. So we'll still be playing the catch-up game for another week or two probably, and then back to the normal nonsense that we get into. But so yeah, if you would like to contact us, you can join our forums at pagejoin.com. Follow the links and come and say hello. There's also a link down below in the description. You can send us a message and tell us how wrong we are about whatever it is we said. It's fun stuff. So yeah, thanks to everyone for listening. It's great to be back, and we will talk to everyone next week.
Bye now.